When my daughter-in-law told me to leave, I smiled instead of crying. It wasn't a brave smile. It was the kind of smile you give when you've run out of tears but still want to look polite. I remember standing near the kitchen door, holding a half-washed cup in my hand. The water kept running from the tap, cold and steady, while her words hung in the air like smoke that refused to fade. "Maybe it's better if you stay somewhere else for a while, Mom," she said, her voice soft but firm. Somewhere else. For a while. People always choose gentle words when they're about to break your heart. I looked at her face, so young and sure. She wasn't cruel. She just looked tired. Tired of me, tired of the tension, tired of pretending that our small house had enough space for two women who loved the same man in different ways. My son was at work that afternoon. He didn't know what was happening, and I didn't plan to tell him. I simply nodded, turned off the tap, and placed the cup upside down on the rack. I could hear the faint ticking of the wall clock, one of those sounds you never notice until silence gets too loud. That was the moment my life quietly changed. I wasn't always alone. There was a time when laughter filled that same kitchen. My husband used to sit by the window every morning with his newspaper. He'd fold it neatly after breakfast and kiss my forehead before leaving for work. We didn't have much, but we had enough. One son, one small home, one steady rhythm. When our son was born, I remember feeling like my heart had found its missing piece. He was a quiet baby, always watching, always thinking. Even as a child, he had that gentle seriousness about him, like he understood more than he should. I used to hum to him at night, little lullabies I made up on the spot. He would curl his tiny fingers around mine and fall asleep before I finished the song. Years passed like pages turning too quickly. My husband's hair turned gray. Mine followed soon after. And before I knew it, our boy became a man. Then one morning, life decided to take something back. My husband went for a walk and never came home. A heart attack, the doctors said. Quick, silent, final. After the funeral, I remember sitting on our porch, watching the rain fall over the empty street. I kept thinking how strange it was, how one chair at the dinner table can stay empty, yet the world keeps moving as if nothing happened. My son was my only reason to get up every morning after that. He met her at work. He called one evening, sounding both nervous and excited. "Mom," he said, "there's someone I want you to meet." I still remember the day she first came home, a delicate girl with bright eyes and careful manners. She brought me flowers, pink lilies wrapped in white paper. She smelled like fresh rain. I liked her instantly. She spoke gently, laughed easily, and called me Mom on her very first visit. She held my hands while I served her tea. I remember thinking, my son has chosen well. When they got married, I felt proud, like I had done something right in raising him. For the first year, everything was peaceful. We shared meals, stories, and sometimes silly arguments about how much salt belonged in the soup. She would ask for my recipes and tell me about her work. I helped with laundry and dinner, tried to make things easier for them. But slowly, small differences started to show, like cracks under the paint. It began with looks, the kind you notice but pretend not to. She would come home late from work, tired and irritable. If I asked whether she had eaten, she'd reply, "Yes, Mom, please don't worry about me." Her smile didn't reach her eyes anymore. Then came the closed doors, the whispered conversations at night. I would hear my son's voice, calm but weary, saying things like, "She didn't mean it that way," or "Let's just keep the peace." I told myself it was normal. Every home has its moods, its quiet storms. Sometimes I tried to help too much. I would fold their laundry, rearrange the kitchen shelves, or remind them to take umbrellas before leaving for work. I thought I was being useful, but maybe I was intruding. I started noticing that my presence made her uneasy. If I sat in the living room while they watched TV, she'd move to the bedroom after a few minutes. If I offered to cook, she'd say, "It's okay, Mom, I already ordered something." The house slowly stopped feeling like mine. Looking back, I realized I didn't handle things perfectly either. Mothers sometimes forget that their children grow up. We keep seeing them as the little boys who used to need us for everything. Maybe I gave too many opinions. Maybe I corrected her once too often. Like the time she cooked pasta and I said, It needs a bit more salt." She smiled politely, but didn't answer. The next day, she cooked alone. Or the time she was cleaning the living room, and I said, "Let me do it. You'll get tired." She said softly, "Mom, I'm fine. Please just rest." Her tone wasn't rude, but it built a small wall between us. Every small wall, I've learned, can grow into silence if you don't notice it soon enough. One Sunday morning, my son and daughter-in-law were having breakfast at the table. I was watering the small plants near the window. They were talking in low voices. She said, "We need space. I can't relax here anymore." He said, "Mom will understand. Let me talk to her." I didn't say anything. I just kept watering the plants, though the soil was already damp. Later that afternoon, when my son went out to buy groceries, she came to me. That's when she said it, softly, carefully, like she was afraid I might break. "Maybe it's better if you stay somewhere else for a while, Mom." And I smiled, because deep down I already knew. That night, I opened my old wooden trunk. I didn't have much, a few clothes, some photos, a small box of my husband's letters. I folded everything neatly. There was no anger, no shouting, just the slow ache of letting go. My son came home later and noticed the packed bag. "Where are you going, Mom?" he asked, confused. I smiled again. "Just visiting an old friend for a few days," I said. He looked at me for a long time but didn't question it. He wanted to believe it was temporary. Maybe I did too. That night, as I lay in bed, I listened to the sounds of the house, their laughter from the other room, the creak of the floor, the ticking clock. Everything felt distant, like I was already gone. The next morning, I woke up before sunrise. I made tea like I always did. The smell filled the kitchen, familiar, comforting. I looked around one last time. The curtains I had stitched myself. The photo frame on the wall. The small crack near the door that my husband used to fix every winter. Every corner of that house held a piece of my life. And yet I felt like a guest there. Before leaving, I placed a note on the dining table for my son. It said, "Take care of each other. I'll be fine. Love, Mom." I didn't say where I was going. Then I picked up my bag, opened the front door, and stepped into the soft morning air. The street was quiet. Birds were singing. The world was waking up, and I was walking away from everything I had built. I didn't cry. Grief doesn't always come with tears. Sometimes it's just a heaviness that sits quietly in your chest and breathes with you. As I walked to the bus stop, I thought about all the mothers who might have gone through something similar, who gave their lives to raise their children, only to find themselves in the background once those children had families of their own. Maybe it's a part of life we don't talk about enough. The silent loneliness that hides behind love. That was the beginning of my second life, the one I never planned for. The life where I had to learn how to live not as someone's mother or wife, but simply as me. When I stepped out of that house, I didn't have a plan. I only had a small bag, a few clothes, and a little money I'd saved over the years. I thought I would stay with an old friend for a few days, maybe a week, until things felt clearer. But life doesn't wait for you to make plans. It just keeps moving. My old friend, Martha, lived a few towns away. We hadn't spoken much since my husband passed, but when I called, she didn't hesitate. "Come, dear," she said. "You'll always have a place here." Her house was small and warm, filled with books and the smell of cinnamon candles. She lived alone too. Her children had moved to different cities, chasing their own busy lives. The night I arrived, she hugged me tight. "You look tired," she said softly. I smiled. "It's been a long day." We didn't talk much that night. Sometimes silence is kinder than words. The first few days felt strange. I wasn't used to sleeping in a bed that wasn't mine. I wasn't used to waking up without the sound of my son's voice in the other room. In the mornings, I would make tea and sit by the window, watching people walk their dogs or drive to work. The world outside seemed so normal, so steady, while mine had quietly cracked open. Martha and I talked in the evenings. She told me stories about her grandchildren, about her garden, about the little birds that visited her porch. I listened, smiled, and nodded, but part of my mind was always somewhere else. At night, when I lay down to sleep, I'd imagine my son coming home from work. I'd picture him calling out, "Mom, I'm back." And then I'd remember I wasn't there anymore. That realization hurt in small, quiet ways. For the first week, I didn't hear from him. No messages, no calls. I told myself he was busy, that he didn't know how to bring up the topic. But after the 8th day, my phone finally rang. It was him. "Mom, where are you?" he asked. His voice sounded tired, uncertain. "I told you," I said softly. "I'm staying with a friend for a little while." "Why didn't you tell me earlier?" he said. "You just left." I smiled into the phone, though he couldn't see it. "I didn't want to cause trouble," I said. "You have your own life now." He paused for a long time. Then he said, "You didn't have to go, Mom." I wanted to tell him that I did. That sometimes leaving quietly is the only way to keep love from turning into bitterness. But I didn't. I just said, "I'm fine, sweetheart. Take care of her, okay?" And before he could say anything else, I ended the call. Life at Martha's house settled into a rhythm. We cooked together, watched evening shows, shared quiet dinners. She would sometimes catch me staring into space and gently place her hand over mine. "You're thinking about him, aren't you? Even old." "Of course I am," I'd whisper. She didn't try to give me advice. She just listened, and that was enough. Sometimes I would walk to the nearby park and sit on a bench for hours, watching children play, hearing laughter float through the air. It reminded me that the world still had joy in it, even if mine felt a little dimmer now. One evening, while rearranging my small suitcase, I found an envelope I hadn't noticed before. It was tucked inside one of my old blouses. It was a note for my son, written on the day I left. "Mom, I don't know how to fix this. Please don't go far. I'll come for you soon." The handwriting was hurried, shaky. I held the paper for a long time, tracing the letters with my fingers. He must have left it on my bed after coming home that night. I never saw it before I left in the morning. For a moment, I felt a rush of hope. Maybe he would come for me soon. Maybe he'd realize how much the house needed my quiet presence. But days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months. He never came. Loneliness doesn't always feel like silence. Sometimes it sounds like footsteps passing by your window. Sometimes it's the hum of the refrigerator at midnight, or the echo of your own breathing when the lights are off. I learned to live with it, to let it sit beside me like an old companion. I started helping Martha with her garden. We planted marigolds and mint. I began cooking small meals again, not because anyone needed them, but because I missed the rhythm of it. Still, every time the phone rang, my heart would jump, only to fall again when it wasn't him. One afternoon, about 3 months after I left, there was a knock on the door. When I opened it, my son was standing there. He looked older, thinner, more tired than I remembered. "Mom," he said quietly. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he stepped forward and hugged me. "I'm sorry," he whispered. I didn't cry. I just held him. A mother's heart doesn't need explanations. It only listens to what's unspoken. We sat at the kitchen table afterward. Martha politely gave us space and went outside. He told me how things at home had been tense, how his wife felt uncomfortable living with another person. "She didn't mean to hurt you," he said. She needs space." I listened quietly. He continued, "I thought we could find a way, Mom, but I didn't want you to feel unwanted." I nodded slowly. "I understand," I said. "She's young. The house is small. Maybe this is for the best." He looked at me with guilt in his eyes. "I'll visit often," he said, and he did for a while. For the next few months, he came every weekend. He brought groceries, took me for short walks, helped Martha fix things around the house. We'd talk about his work, about small things. But over time, the visits became less frequent. Work got busy. Life got loud. Sometimes he would call and say, "Mom, I'll come next week instead." I'd smile and say, "Of course, sweetheart. Take your time." But deep down, I knew what was happening. Distance grows quietly, like weeds in an untended garden. My birthday came in autumn. Martha baked a small cake for me, with white frosting and 3 candles. We sat at the table, the two of us, while the wind rustled the leaves outside. I checked my phone a few times, waiting for his call. It didn't come. I told myself he must have forgotten the date. But when I went to bed that night, I finally let a few tears fall, silently, so Martha wouldn't hear. It wasn't anger. It was just the ache of being invisible to the person you love most. One morning, while cleaning the shelf, I found an old photo frame, the one I had taken with me from home. It was a picture of me, my husband, and our son when he was 10 years old. In the picture, we were all laughing. My husband's arm was around me, and our boy had that wide, toothy grin only children have. I ran my fingers over the glass and whispered, "Where did all that time go?" It's strange. We spend our lives teaching our children to be independent, and when they finally are, we realize how much we needed them to need us. One evening, Martha said something that stayed with me. We were sipping tea on the porch, watching the sunset paint the sky orange and gold. She said, love doesn't disappear when people forget to show it. It just changes its shape. I looked at her, unsure. What do you mean? She smiled softly. Your son still loves you, dear. He just doesn't know how to balance his worlds yet. You gave him roots. Now he's learning wings. It takes time to find the space between the two. I sat with those words for a long time. They didn't erase the pain, but they softened it. Slowly, I began finding small joys again. The morning sun through the curtains, the smell of coffee, the laughter of neighborhood children. I started knitting scarves for the local shelter. I made one in blue, my son's favorite color, and sent it to his address with a note that said, "For winter, stay warm. Love, Mom." He texted me a few days later. "Thanks, Mom. It's perfect." It was just a short message, but it meant everything. I learned that peace isn't something that comes suddenly. It arrives slowly, like morning light creeping into a dark room. There were still nights when I missed him deeply, when I'd stare at the ceiling and wonder if he ever missed me too. But I also began realizing something important. I had spent so many years living for others, I had forgotten how to simply be myself. Now, in this small borrowed room, I was learning again. How to cook for one, how to walk alone, how to breathe without waiting for someone's footsteps. And though it still hurt sometimes, it also felt freeing.